The clear and present danger of disinformation is our conversation here this afternoon. It follows a session just now about disrupting distrust. And of course, those are connected. So I hope that's where we can start. I'm Brian Stelter, formerly of CNN, now a fellow at Harvard University. We can try to put some real information out into the world to make up for all the crazy. I'll tell you a brief, funny, maybe not funny story. So I leave CNN with regards to 2016 and Trump showing that lying works. Has that only become more true in the last 6 years? Do you see evidence that it's less true, hopefully, now? But haven't we seen many Democrats in the last 6 years pressuring Facebook and Twitter and now TikTok to be stronger in content moderation? Hasn't that been a wave that we've seen crash over for years now?
Well, I think this is the question of, ultimately what we're trying to achieve there is some measure of public safety. Right? We're not, sure, there are some politicians who are going to go out and just get angry at Facebook if they see things that are mean. The difference is when, I have a constituency that I'm trying to keep healthy and I can't get them to take a COVID vaccine because of misinformation that's propagated on the internet.
All right, guys. So as you just saw there, that was Brian Stelter working for the globalist powers that be at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, hosting a panel on disinformation, okay, aka how do we censor people, okay, who push back against the narrative, okay? How do we censor them? That's all combating disinformation is, right? Combating the truth. So of course they had CNN reject Brian Stelter host this panel, okay, on disinformation, okay, because again, this guy is controlled, right? He will always go along with the establishment narrative. He is simply a pawn in the game, okay? He's a pawn in the game. And Joe Rogan actually spoke about this with Matt Taibbi, the journalist that has helped Elon Musk with the Twitter files. He spoke about Brian Stelter at Davos, and he roasted Brian Stelter up. He actually called Brian Stelter a prostitute working for lizard people. Take a look.
Brian Stelter is now at the World Economic Forum. What can we do about these problems?
He looked very comfortable there, didn't he?
Of course he does. He's with evil lizard people that are trying to control the world. That's his bosses. He knows how to handle that kind of situation. I've been around these evil lizard people.
He looked as happy as maybe he's ever been.
Well, he's probably very excited just to be working again in any way, shape, or form.
That's true.
He's not a guy that really is supposed to be in front of a camera, right? He's supposed to be a journalist, but he's not even good at that. So what he's doing now is holding water for the evil leaders of the world who want to institute hate speech policies nationwide and, centralized digital currency, and they want everybody to eat bugs, and you will own nothing and be happy. This is the fucking people he's working for now. Because he's basically a prostitute. And, they hired him to go over there and do that. And he's like, what can we do? What can we do better? Yeah. What can we do different to get everybody to stand in line? Yeah. What can we do?
And for a journalist to sit there was that one moment where that woman, Vera Jourova, she's an EU official, and she's talking about hate speech laws, and then she touches the knee of somebody sitting next to her and saying, "You're going to have that in America soon."
Yeah.
And Brian Stelter is sitting there grinning. Yeah. Like that's not offensive to him. Like a European basically saying, "Oh yeah, you're going to have this too soon." Like even though it's completely antithetical to everything that we believe in this country. Like
Well, I think when you're working in a corporate news structure, and you could speak to this better than I could, obviously, but I think when you're working in an environment where you have editors and people in your ear, and you have producers, and you have narratives that the company is pushing, and then you have sponsorships that you're beholden to, it's very difficult to form any sort of problematic or controversial independent thought and then try to express it publicly. You're not going to do it. It's just too scary and sketchy. So when you're trying to keep that job, and here's a guy like Brian Stelter who already lost one of the biggest gigs in all of broadcast news. He was on fucking CNN. And then, here he's standing there and they're saying, you're going to have hate speech laws in America too. He's like, okay, everything's running smooth.
I mean, facts. I didn't hear any lies. Brian Stelter is definitely a prostitute, okay? Just like everybody else in mainstream liberal media, just like all the politicians, right? They're definitely prostitutes. They're all bought and sold, okay? In Brian Stelter's case, they take the narrative, right? They put it up his butt, okay? They screw him, okay, with the narrative, and he got to go out there and repeat that narrative, right? And then he gets paid, and then they send him on his way, right? When they're done with him, they toss him out, right? Toss him out, right? That's what they do to Brian Stelter. So again, I agree. I agree with Joe Rogan. That's exactly what it is. This guy has never had an independent thought. Okay, as you saw at the beginning of this video, he's going up there talking about Trump, pushing narrative. All Trump does is lie. Okay, like Democrats don't lie, right? COVID, talking about, disinformation, which is, again, code name for let's censor anybody that goes against the narrative. It's clearly obvious who this guy is. Okay, he's an establishment type with no talent outside of being the water boy for the message, right? For the narrative. And that's it, right? And that's why they love him. They love him even though he clearly has no talent. He's clearly a miserable human being, but he, for whatever reason, continues to get gigs like this and stay relevant. I mean, they hired this man at Harvard, okay? Harvard University hired Brian Stelter, probably one of the dumbest and least talented news anchors in history of television, right? Again, amazing. It just shows you that we really don't live in a meritocracy when it comes to some of these positions and who's promoted, who's rewarded, who's not. You're not rewarded based off actual talent. You're rewarded based off how well you can play the game, right? How well you can go along with what the powers that be want you to go along with. It's very simple. So that being said, Brian Stelter has responded to Joe Rogan. He claims that Joe Rogan got it all wrong. Okay, again, he claps back at Joe Rogan over claim his bosses are the lizard people of the World Economic Forum. Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear any lies from Joe Rogan. Former CNN host Brian Stelter shot back at podcaster and comedian Joe Rogan after being accused of working for the lizard people behind the World Economic Forum. Rogan discussed the global summit in Davos, Switzerland, held last month with journalist Matt Taibbi. When Stelter's name came up, both men mocking Stelter's appearance on a panel, which came just shortly after his reliable sources was canceled at CNN. Again, that was the worst performance show in history. Okay, I used to have weekly segments, right? Every Sunday, I couldn't wait till Brian Stelter came on, not because I actually watched the show, it's because I wanted to make a video about something ridiculous that he said, or the fact that his ratings had hit another all-time low, okay? Again, Brian Stelter, I miss making content about the guy, right? But he definitely should not be on TV. I'm going to be saying the same thing about Don Lemon when he eventually gets fired. But see, Don, he has an extended life because, he has more infinity stones of wokeness than Brian Stelter. Okay, Brian Stelter is allegedly a straight white male. So, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt, right? He doesn't get much leeway. If he's not performing well, he's out the door, right? Don Lemon, on the other hand, because he's black and, he's also, LGBTQ, he's going to get more leeway, okay? Even though his ratings was bad, even though he's terrible, they're going to give him another shot, right? He's on the morning show at CNN, and that show, lo and behold, is not doing well either. He's probably on the way out the door, right? And then they'll have Don, at Yale or something like that. They'll hire him there, and he'll be doing this mingling and questioning with the lizard people, just like Stelter. According to Stelter, he had no bosses at the panel like Rogan's mocking suggested. Stelter went to the boss at his own expense. Yeah, you might not have any bosses, but they're definitely your boss. You don't have your own opinions, okay? You went there to host the disinformation panel, okay? Because they all knew what you was going to say, right? They know that you're going to toe the line. And if you don't toe the line, you know there's going to be consequences, right? You're not going to have that position at Harvard anymore, right? Quote, Joe Rogan got it all wrong again. The World Economic Forum did not hire me to work in Davos. I went there on my own dime to write about the conference. Stelter tweeted in response to a Mediaite article covering the Rogan and Taibbi interview. Fascinating. So you mean to tell me they had this man host a disinformation panel and either Harvard or the conference didn't pay him to be there? I find it very hard to believe. Stelter also responded to a story from the New York Post about Rogan's comments, telling Rogan to call him if Rogan wants to tell his listeners the truth. Okay, so basically Stelter is telling Joe Rogan to invite him on the show, which I would love to see. I would love to see Brian Stelter on Joe Rogan's show. That would be great TV, right? That would be great TV. Quote, I normally ignore Rogan's rants, but the New York Post wrote a story and asked me for comment. So I said if Rogan wants to tell his listeners the truth, he can call me. He tweeted. On Rogan's podcast, he and Taibbi mocked Stelter for looking so comfortable at the summit. Quote, he's with evil lizard people that are trying to control the world. That's his bosses. He knows how to handle that kind of situation, Rogan said. He later called him, quote, basically a prostitute. Quote, he's supposed to be a journalist, but he's not even good at that. And so what he's doing is holding water for the evil leaders of the world who want to institute hate speech policies nationwide. You know, centralized digital currency, Rogan said. Yeah, and Rogan's 100% right. You've never heard Brian Stelter question the narrative, right? You never heard him question, you know, is this actually really in the interest of America and American values and ideals for us to be having European-style censorship here in America, right, when it comes to free speech. That's pretty anti-American. But again, you never heard a guy actually question that. He goes along with it, he nods his head, and he never pushes back, right? Never pushes back against it. I mean, you have these people openly calling for a one-world government, and they're just telling the world exactly what they want to do.
And we are just now where we move into the exponential phase. And I agree. Artificial intelligence, but not only artificial intelligence, but also the metaverse, new space technologies, and I could go on and on, synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world.
One thing I should say, and I know this is called the World Government Summit, but I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. If you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, that really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there've been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. And so, say like while Rome was falling, Islam was rising, and so you had like the sort of caliphate doing incredibly well while Rome was doing terribly. And that actually ended up being a source of preservation of knowledge and many scientific advancements. And so, so I think we want to be a little bit cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then if the whole thing may collapse. I'm obviously not suggesting war or anything like that, but I think we want to be a little bit wary of actually cooperating too much. It sounds a little odd, but we want to have some amount of civilizational diversity, such that if something does go wrong with some part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse, and humanity keeps moving forward.
Yeah, so who would have thought the space guy, right, would call out the globalists to their face over the potential harms and dangers of a alleged one world government, okay? Which it seems like that's what they want. And you would think that journalists like Brian Stelter, who again calls himself a journalist, he's a Harvard guy, right? He should be the one asking these type of questions and maybe giving a little bit of pushback to this idea that, we should all just be one civilization, right? I'm not sure if that's a great idea, okay? I'm not sure if that is a great idea. But again, Brian Stelter, he would never push back against this. He will never actually, act independently as a journalist and ask real questions, because he's a prostitute. He's bought and sold by the globalist powers that be, just like Joe Rogan is saying. And, it is what it is. He's there to do his job, right? Which is to take the narrative up the rear end and, spit it out to the rest of the world, right? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.